Hi, everyone. It's Andrea Quagenti, and I'm here today with Gail Jones, and we're going to talk about parenting and deschooling and healing so that we can support our children really to live happy, joyful lives. Um, Hi, Gail.
Hey, Andrea. Great to see you again.
Nice to see you too. So I'll read a little bit of your bio, which is quite impressive, and we can have a nice conversation.
Awesome.
Okay. So, Gail Jones, or Coach Gail Jones, is a coach, a national recognized worthiness expert, a workshop leader, an author, and a high self-esteem certified for parents, educators, and kids. Um, you have written two books, and there's one on the way, which we're really excited about. And basically, you're a highly intuitive coach, often catching clients' blocks, releasing and reframing them in life-altering ways. An inspirational teacher with an expertise in both transition and worthiness, you guide clients through transformations for over 25 years. Awesome. And you have worked with Heart Math and wow, a lot of really fun things. You have been on CBS TV, The Doctors, Sirius XM Radio with Maria Shriver. Ariana Huffington's Thrive Global in the Wellness Universe. So, thank you so much for being here. It's awesome to talk about worthiness and self-esteem. These are such important topics, especially for parents.
I'm really excited to share, and especially today, sharing the difference between worthiness and self-esteem and how they're siblings and can work together to heal ourselves.
Awesome. Yeah, so I have personally been on a healing journey for many, many years now. And I worked with Gail, if you remember. I met her in 2010 at a local networking event in Massachusetts. And at the time, yeah, you were a belief change expert, which I'm sure you're still doing that as
Yeah.
well.
Yes. And worthiness is to me, worthiness is at the root of changing your beliefs. Because if you could change your belief about your worthiness, you could change your entire life.
Awesome. Yeah. So I actually did it, right? So I met Gail and it was funny because after I went up to say hello and I just had this strong intuitive feeling that we were meant to work together. I don't know if you remember this, but I said, I'm gonna work with I'm gonna work with you. I need you to help me. And at the time, like a tear came out of just one of my eyes, and I was like, oh, that was weird. So that was kind of my confirmation that my body was telling me like this is the right next step.
Excellent. And look at this, 15 years later, I'm on your podcast.
Yay! Yeah, so I'm going to share this I'm an admin and creator, co-creator of the Self-Directed Education group on Facebook. So I'll share this there, and everyone is welcome to come to that group to join and learn more about alternative education, which is really one of my biggest passions. And really the bottom line is that a lot of us parents were looking for a different way to educate and raise our kids so that we weren't loading them up with negativity, really. But Gail, you can talk more about this. So just to finish that thought, so if anyone is interested in alternative education, if you found me through the self-directed education group, I'll put a link below, but all are welcome to come and learn about this style of education and also about conscious parenting and peaceful parenting, which also goes right in line. So that we're raising kids that are connected to their soul, their spirit, their inner compass, their inner guidance, so that they're acting on their joy, the life isn't based on fear, it's based on love and joy. And so they can really be satisfied and happy.
I love, Andrea, that you said that too, and it's more needed now than ever. And just to complement your message, I would just say the one thing I would hope every parent would learn for themselves and teach their children is that you are not your circumstances. We're getting bombarded with negativity now based on externals that have nothing to do with our inner greatness and our worthiness. We are all born worthy. And if we keep our attention on the external circumstances, versus our inner greatness, we lose our power. And I know, Andrea, you're all about empowering the parent and empowering the child. And the quickest way to do that is shift off of the external back into the internal, as you do. And I do a different way, well, complementary, but just by helping people understand low self-esteem states and high self-esteem states and how you can shift from one to the other. And then also worthiness. If I may, I'd just like to take a second here to explain the difference between worthiness and self-esteem, because I don't think it's widely understood. Are you with
Yeah,
me there?
yeah, that would be
Okay.
great. Even if we just take a step back. So let's say like a parent is watching this and they're passionate about raising a healthy, mature, creative child that is going to have a joy-filled life.
Yes.
So I think you and I both agree on the number one way to raise creative, joy-filled children. And so do you want to say, yeah, I mean, I know you know, but I'll say it too.
Go ahead. You want to say
Yeah.
it? Go ahead.
Yeah, so Gail and I both agree that the number one, the absolute best way to raise joy-filled children is to do your own healing and
Right.
be the role model. And
Right.
we're not talking about being happy all the time or being
Right.
positive all the time. We're humans, we're evolving beings. We all it's so important to embrace all of our emotions, embrace all of our children's emotions, but then to to choose maybe a healing path, choose to maybe work with a coach or choose to come back to a positive mindset. And there's a whole bunch of tools out there to do this. And Gail is one awesome, she's got some great tools that we'll go into. So if this style resonates with you, great. But if not, I would just always come back to that core philosophy.
Right, absolutely. A happy parent, quote unquote, happy, or a parent who's operating more in their wholeness is going to create a child that's more whole. And you are your model to that child. And so I would just like to take a minute to explain the worthiness piece and the low, high self-esteem, because I've coached from teens to adults in their 70s. And one thing I know is when you're working with an adult, it can take longer to rewire the brain. I'm also trained in neuroscience. So the good news is, even if you feel totally unworthy today or at some point in the future, because of neuroplasticity, and I won't get into all the technical, but because of the advances in neuroscience, we now know that you can rewire your brain for new outcomes. Worthiness is formed in the first 7 years of life, and we're born worthy. We're born worthy. It's innate to who we are. But without the proper conditioning, we don't necessarily know it. So, for example, worthiness is being seen, heard, validated, and acknowledged for who you are, not what you do. Many parents, and it's not their fault, it was what was modeled to them, will often validate their children based on what they do, not who they are. And then, as parents who may still be wounded, you may be a high achiever or may have been a high achiever or may have looked for externals like salary, income, prestige, status to define you, when actually worthiness has nothing to do with that. It's based on who you are. And I'll just share when I've coached executives, and this is another thing that's misunderstood. Often, quote unquote, the most externally successful people have the least amount of worthiness because they've used externals to define themselves. And in the process, they didn't really get to know their innate value, based on who they are. And when I coach an executive on worthiness, when we first start this, they often start crying. It's often the first time they were seen, heard, validated, acknowledged for who they are. And when we see, hear, and validate and acknowledge someone for who they are, it's in all their feelings. It's in their sadness, it's in their happiness, it's in their joy, it's in their struggles. And again, you can read all the books on worthiness, you can go to all the seminars, but to really fully integrate a sense of worthiness, you have to be lovingly witnessed. So if you learn to do that and receive that, you'll be able to give it to your children. And so I just want to talk about a couple examples because this is new to a lot of people, because worthiness is the root before you do all the other things like confidence building and self-esteem building. It's the root. So here's a couple of examples of what worthiness and unworthiness looks like. So people who are worthy allow themselves to receive. And many of us, particularly women, as particularly if you're in the helping professions or an empath, tend to be overgivers. So overgiving is a sign of unworthiness. And when you're an overgiver, you attract takers. So allowing yourself to receive might sound joyful, but when you're first learning to allow yourself to receive, you become very vulnerable because when you receive, you're not in control. So even though giving can feel good, it's also controlling in a way, and it's a way we keep ourselves safe. So worthiness is allowing yourself to receive. It's allowing yourself to be paid your worth. Often when we feel unworthy, we will settle for less than what we deserve. So what I encourage as you're making that stretch into claiming your worthiness to be paid your worth and to know your value is again to be really kind and patient with yourself as you learn this. And then I use a lot of words to help people rewire their brain. The brain sees best in capital letters. But one of the words I would say is practice settling up. What would it mean if you settled up instead of settled down? What would be that stretch for you out of your comfort zone to upgrade in some way? The other worthy, unworthy, and worthy that isn't often talked about, but often because of our conditioning, our early life trauma, drama, in an unworthiness mindset, we're conditioned to expect the worst or to be disappointed. So, what I would say in creating a worthy mindset is allowing yourself to be pleased and excited and delighted. So, those sound subtle, but they're really significant. So, bringing this to your kids, what happened in a lot of old parenting, older styles of parenting, kids were reprimanded when they made a mistake. Mistakes are our greatest learning tools. So, one of the things a parent, as they become worthier, can do in their kids is start focusing on what they do right every day. Tell them what they did right, appreciate them for what they did right. And if there's a mistake that needs to be corrected, teach them that mistakes, the most successful people often made the most mistakes. That's how we learn. And that's a whole new model of parenting that is, many of your listeners may know, but it's not advocated enough to focus on what they're doing right. It's not always about correcting and achieving and moving forward. So those are a couple examples between worthiness and unworthiness. To compare it to self-esteem, so we're born innately worthy, and our journey now is to reclaim it into feeling whole again. And even if we had an ideal childhood where we were seen, heard, validated, and acknowledged, later in life, we can be thrown a curveball that can throw us off track on our worthiness. Like, somebody goes through a divorce, through an infidelity, and all of a sudden they don't feel worthy or lovable. So something like that can happen later in life. But our society is conditioned to make us feel unworthy and less than, because if we feel less than, we have a materialistic society that is conditioning us to buy more, have more. And as long as we feel less than, we'll keep doing that. When you start living a soul-driven life, you're already start reclaiming your worthiness. You're not going to be based on those external validations of yourself. That doesn't mean you can't be wealthy in the world. It doesn't mean you can't be abundant in the world. It doesn't mean you can't have materialistic things, but they're not your drive. When you're living a soul-based life based on your worthiness, you will more intuitively magnetize those things. Are you following me there so far, Andrea?
Yeah, I'm just going to actually write some notes because it's just amazing to me. I think your terminology is a little bit different, but from my spiritual training to my work with self-directed education and deschooling, everything you're saying really matches up, which is just so
Right.
awesome. So it is good to know that there are people out there like me and you, and this is the wave. I just believe that this is the wave of the future.
Absolutely.
And, it's just so nice that there are people like us that are putting this information out there and giving parents ways to go through that healing process. We call it deschooling. You say like claiming your worthiness, which is really the same thing, is to letting go. And I would also just add that it's part of society is also school. You know, that the school system is all based on merit. It's all based on performance, you
Right,
know, and that's why a lot of parents have decided to leave that mindset, that paradigm.
right,
But then it's like, I think a lot of parents leave and they're like, oh no, what do I do now? Because
right,
I think when you make a life change following your worthiness or following what feels right, then I feel like all this stuff comes up, you know, like, oh, you know, what did I do? Oh shit, what did I do? And how do I, because then I think the fears come back up.
right.
So yeah, we can,
Oh, I'm
I
glad you
think,
brought that up because
yeah,
when you make any kind of life transition, whether it's, becoming a parent of a homeschooler or deschooling, or you change careers, or you have a new relationship, or any kind of transition, it is all going to come up again. The limiting beliefs are going to come up again. And this is so important. So, how we create a new, and I can't stress this enough, this is based on my training in neuroscience. It's not taught to us in academics. The way we create a new is with a clear intention plus elevated emotions. And to get clear on our intentions is an inner journey. It's not based on what society says. Um, and it can take time. Like when I do my own vision board, it can take me 4 months to put 6 things up there because I'm really clear what I put up there. But a clear intention plus an elevated emotion. So when, as a parent to your child, when they're in a transition, when you're in transition, most of your emotions tend to be negative, fear-based emotions because you're scared and because you're in the unknown. And the unknown is one of the most uncomfortable places for us to be. But without the unknown, we cannot create a new. We're just going to keep on going back, repeating over and over again what we did in the past with a different set of players. So, as a parent, one beautiful thing you can do for your children is teaching elevated emotions. Elevated emotions include things like excited, living in awe and wonder, joy. So when a child is in a fearful state, what would make you feel joyful? What would make you feel exciting? You don't negate the negative emotion. You let them feel it. I will never tell anyone to repress an emotion, but when they've been stuck in it for too long, how can you create a shift? And it's the job of the facilitator, the parent, the coach, the therapist, to help lead them into the new with the elevated emotions. It's so hard to do it yourself when you're in the transition. We all need a mirror and a guide up. So this is a good transition point, if it's okay, Andrea. I want to explain the difference between low self-esteem and high self-esteem
sure, yeah.
traits. And again, this is something that's not taught in the school system. It's not even taught in every parenting class I've taken my whole life. And it wasn't even taught in my early life coach training. I've been a coach for 25 years, but this was never offered. And then I got certified in high self-esteem for kids and teens and young adults and parents and educators. So the low self-esteem states, and we all have one predominant self-esteem, low self-esteem state. And I would say since the pandemic and the political change going on in our country, that we could have all of them and they could be feeling escalated. And that's okay. Don't judge yourself. We're going through a lot of change right now. But low self-esteem states are anger, fear, or sadness. So just take a second for now and just intuitively see what feels the most predominant one for you and just jot it down so you know which is the one, which your go-to when something is uncomfortable in your life and you're feeling not so good about yourself. Just think about that.
So it's
It's okay to
anger, fear, and
sadness.
sadness.
So we all and have one. So also help your child identify what is their go-to, is their low self-esteem state when they're feeling less than, not enough, unworthy. What is their predominant one? Again, I will never tell anyone to squelch their emotions, but there's a point when you got to move forward and talk about the externals. The mental health crisis right now with the youth is all based on fear and trauma and drama. And again, that's focusing on the circumstances versus the inner greatness that we always have. No one can take it away from us. So to shift to a high self-esteem state, these, and again, high self-esteem states are misunderstood greatly in the world. We think the celebrity, Taylor Swift, major football player, whatever, these celebrities are in a high self-esteem state. They may very well be in a high self-esteem state, but being widely acknowledged in the world is not high self-esteem. These are the qualities of a high self-esteem state. One is gratitude. Gratitude is one of the greatest ways to get back into an elevated state. And just in my personal life, I don't get out of bed till I write down 10 things I'm grateful for. And the physical act of writing it down trains the brain to look for more of that. They don't have to be big things. I could be grateful for being on Andrea's podcast today. I could be grateful that it's a beautiful sunny day. I could be grateful that I have time to sit with a cup of green tea. I can be grateful for an award I win. I can be grateful for my book coming out in September. But I could be grateful that I saw a friend I haven't seen in 30 years. But as you train your brain to, I would say start with 3 to 5. But as you train your brain to look for things you're grateful for, you'll see more things to be grateful for. And another thing we know from neuroscience, as we're doing this high self-esteem and worthiness piece, is the most important moments of your day are the first 5 minutes when you wake up and the 5 minutes before you go to bed at night. So when you wake up in the morning, the last thing you should do is go to social media, news, anything. You just sit there for 5 minutes, write down what you're grateful for, or a clean slate for the day. But that's the best time to rewire the brain. And the other statement I would do the first 5 minutes of the day is write down this statement: I allow myself to know I'm worthy. Even if you don't believe it, if you say that the first 5 minutes in the morning, it will start rewiring. It takes 45 to 63 days to rewire a limiting belief such as unworthiness. And I think it could take longer depending on the age. I know when I've coached teens, they get it very quickly. When I coach adults, it could take a lot longer, especially if they had trauma and drama in their life and they're carrying a lot more baggage, but it can be rewired. So it seems, so people think it's a lot of work. It's not a lot of work. It's just boring to repeat the statement every day, but it takes vigilance and a discipline. So I allow myself to know I'm worthy and gratitude first 5 minutes in the morning. And the same thing 5 minutes before you go to bed at night. If you're agitated or frustrated or angry, do not go to bed. Walk around, calm yourself, meditate, but do not go to bed. Because what you tell yourself the 5 minutes before you go to bed at night, it's like downloading the software into the brain, which is the hardware. And that's what's going to churn around in your brain at night. So if you go to bed at night and say, I allow myself to be, no, I'm worthy, or I'm grateful today for 3 to 5 things. And one of the things I used to do with my children when they were little, and this is way before I was even a coach, it was intuitive, or I heard it somewhere. But when they were going to bed at night, I'd read them a book or tuck them in, but I would ask them, what was the best part of your day? That's what gets churned around in their brain as they go to sleep. They could come home from school and have had a horrible day, didn't make the team, didn't work out, somebody hurt their feelings. But the 5 minutes before they went to bed at night, the last question I asked them was, what was the best part of your day? So high self-esteem states, one is gratitude. So if you're in a low self-esteem state, again, sadness, anger, or fear, and you're in it too long, how can I shift? So you can choose one of these. So one is gratitude. The other is empathy. So here's an example of, in traditional schools, I don't know if this ever happens in the unschooling, but if a child has been bullied, first of all, a bully is a child with a low self-esteem state. It's living in low self-esteem. But if you can have empathy for what pain can this child be in that they have to be so cruel to another, and that's a stretch, but that's teaching empathy. Or the more you feel your feelings, the more you're able to empathize with someone else. But to teach your children empathy, what would it feel like to be that child who just lost a parent? What would it be like to be that child who feels left out? So getting into an empathetic state is actually high self-esteem. And a close sibling, again, to that state is forgiveness. Who can I forgive? Forgiveness is a high self-esteem state. So there might be people in your life that you need to forgive. And again, forgiveness is a journey. It doesn't happen overnight. But most importantly, how can you forgive yourself? Forgive yourself for parenting less than perfect because you didn't know better. Forgive yourself for going down a wrong career path or choosing a wrong relationship. All these things were just learning points and growth spurts. But how can you forgive yourself? Because the more forgiving you are to yourself, Also, the more forgiving you'll be to your child when they make a mistake. Again, mistakes are learning. They're the greatest learning tools. And what can I do right next time? So again, to compare worthiness to its sibling self-esteem, they are siblings. I consider worthiness the root of everything. If you can build a strong worthiness foundation, you can manifest anything. It's in us. It's an innate greatness, and we find ways to tap in. Self-esteem is conditional. It's based on what you do. I become a better athlete. I become a better student. I become a better person. I performed better in that play. I drew a better picture. Those things can build your self-confidence and your self-esteem in the world. But you can have confidence at times, but it's conditional. Worthiness is not conditional. And you all have the ability to integrate a strong sense of worthiness in yourself. And at the end, I'm going to share with Andrea my handout on the 5 tips to instilling worthiness, and you can email her or me to get that handout.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, thank you for sharing. There's so much, and I love that you just boil it down to the two things, worthiness and self-esteem. And I guess a topic that's been coming up for me, especially in the homeschool world, alternative education, is a lot of people are very unhappy with the election. And it seems that maybe some people feel like, how could they ever be happy when they really hate the leader of our country, when they really feel scared and hatred, and that they really think that the world and the United States is going in the wrong direction. So
Right.
how could they feel anything but low emotion? How could they feel worthy or self-esteem? How would it even be right for them to try to trick themselves into feeling happy when it's
I
what?
wouldn't say they're trying to trick themselves.
Okay,
I would say you have a choice of where you're going to give your power. I'm not, I know everybody's disturbed right now, what's happening in the world. You don't want to ever disregard a feeling or emotion.
okay,
But my take is all this darkness is happening to be exposed, but I believe light outshines darkness. And I feel like all of us that do this inner work are bringing more and more light to the more inner work you can do on yourself to access your lightness and your greatness, the more you're going to impact the world. If you give all your power to the dysfunction or the fright, you're letting darkness win. And we all have a light in us. And again, I would just go back to we are not our circumstances. If we focus on the circumstances, we focus on the president, we focus on the economy, it's important to be aware of them,
okay.
but give your power back to your innate greatness. I was born great. I was born worthy. How can I instill a stronger sense of worthiness in me so I can make a greater impact in the world? And, even one of the things I teach with vision boards, especially for kids, and it's a great activity for parents and kids to do together, or teachers and kids to do together, or facilitators and kids to do together. So many vision boards will people paste on pictures of what they want in their life, the house and the country, the new car, whatever, those materialistic driven things. One of the most important questions to answer on a vision board is what contribution can I make to the world? And so if that's on there, and what are my unique skills that will that I can contribute? So even in acknowledging your children for their greatness, it's not performance based, although it's important to acknowledge them they've done a job well done. But it could be to your son, I love what a good brother you are to your little sister, or to your daughter, I love how funny you are. I love how creative you are. Do you know your humor lights up a room? Or I love the way you take care of others. Notice, start noticing on your children their uniqueness and let them feel their value based on their uniqueness. And the more they are valued for who they are, not what they do, again, that external world is based on circumstances. When they know their essence and their uniqueness, they can make their own contribution to making this world a better place, but based on their uniqueness, not on what society wants them to do. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah, no, that's awesome. So I'm just thinking of an example if it, when it's not even if, when our child is having a hard time, whether it was because for any reason really, if they're upset over, the state of the world, or because something happened with a friend, it's really to be with them and acknowledge those emotions. Tell me how
Right,
you're feeling. Are you feeling, if they say I feel sad or mad or angry, so to be with them, acknowledge those feelings, comfort
right,
them, and then to bring so that's what I feel is empowerment, right?
right.
So then
I just want to say something on that because that was really important what you just said. So when you're witnessing them in their low self-esteem states, sadness, anger, or fear, right? You want to, so that's a victim state. There's nothing wrong with that. I mean, but you want to shift them into creator mode. So when another thing you can actively do besides rewiring the brain, the mindset, is getting them to create. So that's why I love using a vision board. And the most one empowering question to have them see beyond the circumstances to get them from victim to creator is, what would my life look like if I knew I were worthy? So it wouldn't look like all the negativity we're seeing, right? What would it look like if I knew my life was worthy? Who would I be? What would I be doing? What would I feel like? That automatically gets them into creating. And I would also say, ask them to use their wildest imagination. I was teaching a teen group in Phoenix at a Unity Church, and we went around the room, and it was a divine experience because when you're an outside facilitator, a parent has to be in the room. So it happened to this parent of this young boy was in the room, and when I went around the circle and I asked them what their life would look like if they knew they were worthy. There was a young boy, I think about 12, rather small in size for his age, but he said, if I knew I was worthy, I wouldn't be bullied. So the room went silent. It was his mother that was sitting next to me. Nobody had known he'd been bullied. So he articulated that. The whole room was surrounding, like expressing our vulnerability is a way we get support. Not, being stoic is a way never to get your needs met. If you don't express your vulnerability and you just will not get your needs met. Um, but so I asked him to, what would your life look like if you knew worthy? And so I asked him to journal about it, and we know what came up for him. So the next time we met, the second session, he was eager to share, what came up with him. And he said, I have a gift. And I said, oh, what's the gift? And he says, I see auras. I can read people's energy. And people just went silent. That's a real stretch for a 12-year-old boy to say in a group and to have felt that. And
Oh,
again, if he had said that in many traditional settings, people would have rolled their eyes. And I just said to him, don't ever forget your ability to connect to people's energy. And then the next session, I had the people in the group, all the kids all do vision boards. Their vision boards were wild, like where they wanted to travel, where they'd be living, what they'd be doing. There was so much joy on those boards. If you limit yourself by the circumstance, you miss it. Does that make sense?
yeah, yeah, no, totally. I think that it's just it's